Hello everyone, I'm Soma Mazumdar.
And I'm Orod and welcome to Kanban Lab podcast. In each episode, we'll pick a common question and dive into a different aspect of Kanban, exploring its principles, practices, and applications, and answering that question.
Our goal in this podcast is to demystify Kanban and help listeners understand how it can benefit their teams and organizations through addressing the common misconceptions, clarifying concepts, and answering questions about Kanban. Hey, Orod.
Hey, Soma, good morning. How are you?
Well, I am a bit cold today because Sydney is freezing. So what
Oh,
about you?
that's
How's
good.
Melbourne?
So I'm
That's
not
not
jealous
good.
today. Yeah, Melbourne is also cold, but sunny. And
Well,
that's the kind of a weather I like. I don't mind to be a little bit, fresh, chill, but sunny.
we have the sun shining here as well, but still, I think summer and winter doesn't go together well. So,
That's good. So Sydney is the right place for you.
well, hopefully. But okay, let's talk about what have you heard recently about Kanban that have surprised you?
Um, One of the very common question that people ask me, especially in my Kanban courses, is that Kanban is good for operation, but it's not the right approach for project. So I don't know if this is something that you also talk to people and heard from different people or not, but this is a very common question. So I thought that would be good to have a chat about this one and see if Kanban is the right approach for project or it's just a good approach for operations.
Well, this is again very common myth that we have about Kanban is that, like it cannot be applied to project or product or services. And it is good for, BAU operations
Mm,
support kind of work. Uh, it always, I wonder what could be the reason, when people ask that or people make those kind of statement, like, do they have any proof to support that, any evidence? Because Kanban is good for any knowledge work. So be it operations, be it a product development, a project delivery, or a service development, it doesn't matter.
mm,
And Kanban has very specific definitions of services. Like it starts with, there is a customer centricity when
hmm
Kanban practices are applied, because you start understanding the customer better. You start with the customer and you end with the customer to deliver better services and products to them. So,
hmm
what could be the reason when people make those kind of statements? What are your
mm.
thoughts on that?
So I think one of the main reason is, when you work with operation, you are more responsive. I prefer
Mm,
to use responsive over reactive, right? So you
mm,
normally don't plan to deliver something or you don't have a long-term plan, right? So
mm,
you normally, some issue comes and then you need to act as soon as possible. And because Scrum doesn't like unplanned work, okay, so
mm,
Scrum is a framework that doesn't like unplanned work, okay?
mm.
So they say, okay, because we have lots of unplanned work and Scrum doesn't work for us, so let's do Kanban. I think that's one of the main reason.
Mm,
Another reason is that in Kanban, we don't necessarily encourage people to estimate the work. Of course, if they want to estimate it, they can estimate it, right?
mm,
But in Scrum, you estimate, and then after a while, you come with some sort of velocity. So you know that these 5, 10 people deliver, I don't know, 20, 30 story points, right?
Mm,
And then they break the whole project to lots of stories estimated, and then that gives them some sort of a timeline. So they have something to basically plan for their
mm,
project and say, okay, this project can take 6 months if this
mm,
team work on that, something like that. And that doesn't mean that you cannot be predictable with Kanban. That's probably because they're not quite familiar with how Kanban can help team and
mm.
service delivery team to be predictable,
Yeah,
which probably would be good if we talk a little bit about it in this episode. However, I think that needs a proper separate episode by itself.
episode. Yes.
But based on my experience with these people, is basically these two reasons. So one is
Mm,
Scrum is not quite responsive, so it doesn't like unplanned work, and in
mm,
operation we have lots of unplanned work. And the other one is Scrum estimate the work and gives us some sort of predictability.
mm. The funny thing is that when you read Scrum Guide, you wouldn't find anything about estimation in there as well. So that's a totally separate topic to talk about.
Mm,
But yes, I totally agree that this too could be the reason. And also, the third reason is that people are not aware. How can
mm,
you predict with Kanban, as you mentioned? Because the whole point of practicing Kanban so that you can make your system more and more predictable, you
hmm
can let your customer know that when the service or the product or the project will be delivered based on data. So there's no assumptions there. So that's a totally different thing. How Kanban likes to predict and estimate is that
hmm
it's based on your historical data. It's based on your lead time. What's your system lead time? What's your customer lead time? And focusing on those things, the prediction is done.
hmm
And also I believe that like this is another thing when I think about Kanban, uh the service delivery principle in Kanban,
hmm
and it like Kanban has a service delivery principle which has a huge focus on service and understanding customer and delivering value to customer. So when all these things are included, again, it's not very popular, right? Like many people wouldn't know about it. So
hmm
there is also a misconception that Kanban doesn't have all this and practices incorporated. So let's go try Scrum because Scrum says that you will get something after a sprint. And there's also a fun fact, like if you go talk to teams in different
hmm
organization, all those estimations have never actually worked, and there will be always unplanned things coming even in a sprint.
That's true. Uh, One of the challenges with no estimation is, uh, as you just mentioned correctly, that we look at the historical data and see, okay, how long this works took, from when you committed until it's delivered, that kind of thing. You look at the histogram diagram, and that gives you some sort of predictability. But, you know, if you look at the project, right? So project is a temporary feature, basically, or a
Yeah.
bunch of features, right?
Mm,
Which has a start date and an end date normally, and you need a group of people to deliver this project, right?
mm,
If these people never work together, then you don't have any historical data. Then you can't really be predictable. So you can't say, okay, how long this project will take to be delivered, And I think this is a valid statement that a lot of people raise it when they say Kanban is probably not the right approach for project because you don't
mm,
have anything. So how you can be predictable?
mm,
However, on the other side, other approaches like Scrum, that has pretty much similar problem because this is a new project,
Yeah.
and if you have a high performing team, predictable team that consistently deliver,
Mm,
same amount or similar amount every sprint, then yes, maybe. And also if these people familiar with the project, then yes, they might be predictable. But based on my experience, most teams, most Scrum teams also not quite predictable, right? So what
mm,
they committed to deliver, it's not even aligned, not even close to what they deliver.
yeah.
So they probably have similar approach.
Mm,
So what do you think we can do if we have a project and say, okay, guys, we have project, let's start, you know, Kanban, and we think that Kanban it helps. Then what do you think we can answer to these people if they say, okay, so we don't have any historical data when this project will finish?
that's a really good perspective, and I think I have come across one of such teams where they approached me in an organization that they want to try Kanban, but then I did ask for the historical data first,
Hmm.
and then they are like, no, it's a brand new team. We have nothing. So when you do not have anything, I think the best way is to start
Hmm.
and start collecting data, because there are two things right here. Like, first is that start where you are. If you are a new team, I think
Hmm.
trusting each other is the key at that point, where you can understand each other's capability and strengths and complement each other. So the only way to do that is that when you start working together,
Hmm.
like the lead time, we can start collecting it on the
Hmm.
way. Now,
Hmm.
most of the projects, as you mentioned, will already have a deadline attached to
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
Whether, the people can deliver it on that deadline or
Hmm.
not, that is not very like that sometimes is not negotiable, because
Hmm.
like when the deadline comes attached to a project without even understanding what kind of skill set is required, if the team is new or not, then
Yeah.
that is already like that's like you don't have to worry about it, because that's already done.
Hmm.
So I would say the best approach is to start working together, come up with
Hmm.
policies that you think will help you to understand the team, but at the same time, deliver the work in the best possible way. Start reviewing those policies within, like, if infrequent interval, so that you know that, okay, what is working, what's not working. And I would say, just like, like if you go back to our last episode on the cadences,
Hmm.
apply all the cadences that KMM, like level one teams will do. That's
Hmm.
the basic, where you are trying to understand what could be your whip limit. Is it
Hmm.
working? Is the whip limit is the right whip limit?
Hmm.
What kind of work is coming? Do we need discovery task for every work that we are doing, or we can just get into the work? So all those things will only be uh, visible to
Hmm.
people once they start. So starting is the key here. That's what I think. What do you think?
Mm. No, I agree with you. In fact, right now, currently, okay,
Mm,
I'm working with a team. Everyone new in that team. Okay, so
mm,
none of them worked together before. They all hired
mm.
specifically to work on some part of a project, or actually a
Okay.
project. Okay,
Yeah.
and it has a hard deadline, very, very hard deadline.
Mm.
Okay, I'm not going to mention anything about that because it's confidential, but the hard
Yes.
deadline, it is very hard. Okay,
Yeah.
it's not negotiable at all.
Mm,
And so what I've done with them, and I also never work with these people, they just ask
mm,
me, hey, Orod, this is a very critical project. Can you help with these people? Right?
mm,
Just do something.
mm,
So the only thing I told them was to, so you have a big idea of this project, so we know what needs to happen.
mm,
So let's break it to some smaller
Mm.
deliverable, user
Yeah.
story, whatever you want to call it, which
Mm.
has a value to the business.
Yeah.
However, this story by itself don't have any value,
Yeah.
direct value. So all of them together needs to be integrated
Mm.
to have some value to the customer. Okay.
Yeah.
But this story, I just told them, just break it in a way that makes sense to you. So
Mm.
it's buildable and testable and deployable, right?
Yes.
Independently.
Yeah.
Maybe not releasable to the customer, but
Yeah.
deployable. Okay.
Yes.
And then they say, okay, we need to estimate. I was okay, if you want to estimate, estimate, right?
Yeah.
And then they got together, estimate the absolute estimate by days, right? So
Wow.
this story, 20 days, that story, 10 days,
Yeah.
stuff like that, right?
Mm.
And I'm talking about an organization that almost everyone follows a Scrum, right?
Mm. Mm.
And I was like, okay, we have very hard deadline, and it's like 2 months, 3 months project kind of thing, or at least from start until the end date, about 3 months. So if I want to do Scrum, right,
Mm.
then they get confused and they complain, what is this? What is the story point? What is, I don't know, why do we need to spend that much time for planning and this and that and things like that that we discussed before.
Mm. Mm.
Plus, everything that they estimated, however they estimated by day, it's more than 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So 25 days, stuff
Yeah.
like that. So there is no point, right?
Yes.
Let's say their estimation is correct.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. So rather than, bother and waste everyone's time with the framework, so when they broke into, I don't know, some task, not tasks, some stories, then they
Mm.
ask them, okay, so what is the first step you need to do? Right? They said we need to have a, architecture design. Okay, so what is the next one? We need to
Mm.
do the detail design. Okay,
Mm.
sure. So then, the data type, this, that, stuff. Okay, what else? Then we need to build it. Then we need to test it and stuff. Okay. So we designed a workflow,
Mm.
and uh, we knew how many developer we have, and we knew how many tester we have, right? And it's not like developer can test, tester can,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
They work collaboratively, but we can't say, okay, tester you code and developer you test, right? It's not like
Mm.
that at all.
Mm.
So I just started tracking, and I just trust them, right? So I say, okay, are you comfortable to meet the deadline today? Yes, we are comfortable. Yeah.
Mm.
All right, sure, let's do it. Because you don't know, right? When
Yes.
everything new, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Even when I look at the estimation, it was more than it will go past the deadline, right? But they said we are comfortable. I said, okay, if you're comfortable, then you're comfortable, do
Yeah.
it. Right? So they started working, right? I didn't even introduce whip limit to them because I was like, this is too
Mm.
much stress and too much distraction.
Yeah.
But we knew the number of developer and we knew the number of testers.
Yeah.
And I just asked them, okay, when the developers start working on something, I just say, okay, you know, do you prefer to work on multiple work or just one and, you know, get it out of your way and the next one? They all said, yeah, we prefer to work on one
Yeah. That's
story.
good. Yeah.
However, if it's something very small, then we pull it. Right? Oh,
Yeah.
it's just a text change, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it has no distraction. All right, so let's pull it and let's do it. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, and then I started working, right? Behind the scene, I track how long, the lead time and stuff like that, right?
Mm.
It's so interesting that first of all, they estimated 6 days. It took like a lot more, 15 days
Yeah.
or something, right? Because when they estimate based on day, what they don't estimate is the waiting time, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
best case scenario, you can say 5 days development, 3 days tester, and best case scenario,
Mm.
you spend 5 days on development, 2 days on design, and you know,
Yeah.
you don't know how many bugs you might find, you don't know how many unknown things you find,
Exactly.
on the way. You don't know how long the work needs to wait, right?
Mm, mm,
And also, again, because this is a completely new project, completely new platform, completely new people, after they finish the design, they realize that, oh, we made a mistake. So we need
yeah,
to change the design.
yeah,
Okay. So these kind of things also, it's very difficult to, take it into account when you estimate in advance, right?
yes.
So yes, they estimated, but I didn't care about the estimation. Behind the scene, I just tracked the lead time. And then, after, they had some progress and, some works done and they get a little bit more comfortable working together. Then I show them that this is what you estimated. This is the actual time that it took, which is not
Mm,
even a line.
yeah.
Um, Plus, when you estimate just one person, right?
Yes.
But sometimes multiple people work, so just to get it done. Sometimes multiple
Mm,
testers start testing together to get it
mm,
done, right? That kind of stuff. And another thing we've done, which worked very well, was the frequent demo. So we
mm.
frequently demo. That helps to increase the collaboration between people,
Yep.
developer testers, right? Some mini demo, like 5 minutes. This is where I am.
Yes.
Anyone has any feedback, any idea, right? To the
Mm,
business. So we have a kind of a product owner
mm,
slash BA kind of thing, someone who represent the business and understand the business, right? And
mm,
that helps a lot because, for example, one of the field they decided that needs to be integer, and she come
mm.
and say, no, this is a string because this is
Yeah.
some sort of ID that it can have, some alphabet,
Yes.
right? And she
Yeah.
pick it up, very soon. So
Mm,
frequent demo and a frequent and also collaboration between testers, developers. That helps a lot. So
mm.
sometimes, you don't need to, and I never even mentioned we are doing Kanban because also we don't have a hard WIP limit.
Yes.
However, we have a unwritten WIP limit, right?
Okay.
But it's not hard, right? So I
Yes.
leave
Yeah.
it to them. I trust them and say, okay, we don't, that's again one of the Kanban principles, right? We don't manage work, we manage the work and
Yeah.
just let people to organize around the work, right? So
Yes.
let them to make the best decision because I believe
Yeah.
that those who do the work, they probably can make the best decision. And
Exactly.
it's going well, to be honest. And also we
That's
have
nice.
hard dependency with another teams, right? So
Mm, yeah.
our code needs to be consumed by another team, right? So
Yes.
we have also a weekly catch up with them and developer, both team, they
Yeah.
talk to each other every day, right?
Yes.
But for better visibility, we have a weekly kind of official, very
Mm,
quick, 15 to half an hour maximum, just
yeah.
to see, okay, this is where we are, this is what we've done, this is the field,
Mm,
integer in our part, what is yours, that kind of things, just to make sure, we have transparency across the organization as well. All
that's
right, that's pretty
yeah.
much what I'm doing currently right now. I use Kanban principles. I use a proper
Yes.
workflow. I track the waiting time,
Mm,
right? So it's
mm,
waiting for tests, it's waiting for deployment, it's waiting for
yes.
developers, right? It's waiting for design, that kind of thing.
Mm,
And I just let them to decide, and I just every now and then I just ask some question.
yeah.
Don't you think you're working on too many bugs, or don't you
Uh,
think you're testing too many works? No, we're good, or no, we know what we're doing. Okay, good.
yeah.
If you're good, you're good.
Yeah. That's really nice. And I loved your approach because you're also, like going back to the basics. Just start where you are, and then from there we can always experiment and see where to go. Um, that's really nice. And I think this is something I like I have done in a very similar way. When people are new to, like new team is coming with a
Mm,
problem to solve together, yes, like I would be like, yes, let's start working together and we can always get the data as we go, and like you are actually getting the lead time as you go, because they are giving you the absolute time, but then the wait time is added on top of it, so that becomes the lead time, which is really nice. And this is again, like if we have to wrap up this episode,
Hmm.
there are a few takeaways, right? Like one is that Kanban is good for any kind of knowledge work. All you need to understand and know that where to start. That's it. And I would say start where you are and go from there, instead of just creating new roles, new rules for people. The second point, which you mentioned, and I never thought that, like we'll be talking about that in this episode, is like really, really good. What do you do when you have a new team, when you do not have any data? Because most of the predictability in Kanban comes from the historic data. And I loved it, Orod, what you are doing with your team. And that is another takeaway, that, like when you do not have any data, you just have to get the team together, talk about the workflow, like how the work is flowing through different stages. Maybe talk about, what the different kind of work comes to you as a team, what you are
Hmm.
expecting, and then start from there. And that is really good, because we are talking about workflow, we are talking about work item types
Yeah.
in the team.
So two things. Start as soon as possible. Don't waste time talking and training people about the framework and this and that.
Yeah.
And visualize the work, because when
Yes.
people see the work, then they come with some idea. If you see 20
Yes.
work in this column, then everyone know that it's too much, right?
Yes,
So you
exactly.
don't even need to necessarily put a whip limit.
Yeah.
Guys, there are lots of work here. What do you think about it? What can we do about it,
Yeah.
right? So start as soon as possible. Don't waste too much on framework, and let people to organize around the work. Trust them
That's
and let them do it. Based on
yes.
my experience with multiple teams,
Yeah.
at least this that works for me. Right? Maybe it doesn't work for other people. I don't know, but I trust people
Yes.
and let them do. And every now and then, I make sure behind the scene, make sure they collaborate,
Yes.
visualize the work, and
Yeah.
I just ask them some question.
Yes.
Just to make sure they
Yeah.
and help
I
them to
agree.
understand the problem themselves and solve it themselves.
Yes, they
That's
are
it.
smart. People are
Yeah,
really, really smart, and they have that skill set, like that's why they are there. So I
exactly.
totally agree. Trusting people is the key, whatever we do. And that's
Hmm.
something people should also, like whoever is listening to this episode should take it as a, takeaway from this episode, that trust people. And the other one, so when you have a team who is there from a long time, and you think that, okay, like you want to try out Kanban, but you are also at the same time little bit hesitant that, you might not be able to predict, then please go back to the basic. Start, looking at your historic data, start tracking your lead time, because when you have the data to get you the lead time for different work item types in your system is much more predictable.
Yeah. Or do whatever you always do,
Yes, you can
but
try
try
that
to be
as
better,
well.
right? Try to be better.
Yes, yes.
All
So
right. Good one.
I
That
think,
was actually a good chat, Soma.
yeah, I loved it actually. Or like, the examples that you provided, what you are doing with the team currently is really amazing. I would be very keen to hear more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to wrap it up, we talk about Kanban is not good for project, only for operation. I think everyone agree that Kanban is the right approach for operation when you have lots of unplanned work, because it's more responsive and you pull the work when you're available. You don't need to wait for the end of the sprint and stuff like that. Kanban also can be the right approach when you work on new project. If you have historical data, then yes, look at the lead time and the histogram, and that helps you to be a little bit more predictable. If you don't have anything, just do whatever you're comfortable with. Just make sure to visualize your work, start as soon as possible, and make sure to collaborate.
Yes.
Cool. All right.
Well, well, thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for listening. I hope you got something useful out of this episode. And if you have any experience with using Kanban with new projects, good or bad, please let us know and then we can
Yes.
discuss about it.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
so much.
you. Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone. Thanks, Orod.